Local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
Welcome and good morning. Well, the two people you're about to meet work in a unique place where critical decisions are made just about every hour of every day and often in some highly stressful circumstances. Today, we want you to meet Roscoe Harris. He's a telecommunications operator with the 911 Center, and Deborah Cottle, who works in the center as a communications manager.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for coming in. I think people have a general idea about, not in detail, and we'll get into it, what an operator does, what a telecommunications operator does.
Yes.
But Deborah, give us a little insight into your role as communications manager.
As a communications manager, I try to oversee everything that the supervisors and the telecommunicators are doing. I have one person that works with me, Susan Roster, and she's my right and left hand girl. So we try to keep the center running, making sure that the telecommunicators
So
have
you're
the
responsible
training.
for the overall operation?
Yes, sir. And making sure that the training, the technology, the equipment, everything's up and running and there's no problems. And I try to buff any issues that come about while they're working on the floor so they can continue their normal function, and I handle all the other stuff behind the scenes.
But you, before you were the manager, you were an operator.
Yes, sir. I was a telecommunicator for almost 13 years. And
Telecommunicator.
I left the floor as a telecommunicator, and I was the first training coordinator for the department.
Oh, we're going to talk about how you train for a job like this. Roscoe, how did you get into this type of work?
Well, the opportunity presented itself, and I thought it would be something that was exciting. So,
well, how did you find out about it?
Actually, just from they post a lot of the opportunities on like websites, and that's when I saw it, and I decided to go after it.
How did you get into it? And first of all, how long have you been doing it? You were
20 years.
20 years.
And my best friend was a telecommunicator. She was only in dispatch for a short time, and then fell in love with the aspect of law enforcement, so she became a police officer, and so she drug me into the center before she left. So,
and you looked around and you said,
I love it.
Yeah, really?
I love it.
Well, all right, so you have been a trainer.
Yes,
right?
sir.
What is it, what's the training like, Roscoe? What was it like?
Well, actually, it's developed and it has evolved into a very a strong, needed resource. But I actually was the first trainee. When Deborah began training as a trainer, I was the very first trainee that she had when they started the program, about 10 years ago. And so it was great then, but they've developed it so much now, so much more, that it's just really a great tool.
What is it like? How do you train somebody?
Well,
is it on-site, on-job?
It's pretty much hands-on, but we do have a class environment where we're going to introduce you to things that you're going to run across and try to get you comfortable with it. So when it actually happens, you don't freeze, which causes a problem for yourself, plus who's calling for help.
Right.
So we look at the individual, we interview them and ask about multitasking, because that is such
Yeah, we're going to get into that. I don't think
aspect.
people have any idea about what the telecommunicators are doing for every call.
Yes.
I've gone in and observed. We'll talk about that. But how long was the training, or how long is it now?
It's 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
240 hours. It's hands-on, hands-off. We'll teach you a little bit in the classroom, then we'll take you across to the center and let you experience what you've learned in there. And so it's back and forth, but 240 hours, it sounds like a lot. It's not enough, I don't think. And we're working on that aspect of it. But we teach you how to use the computer so that you're comfortable with it. You can get in and out and answer the questions while somebody is screaming at you. That's the biggest thing.
We're going to talk about the calls and what kind of calls you get and all of that, but what was it like your very first day on the job? I mean, were you nervous?
Yes, I was extremely nervous. The very first day that we actually went live, because as Deborah said, we had an environment in the classroom where we had some mock calls, and although we knew it wasn't real, it still got the blood flowing. But once you got into the center, yes, I was very nervous. I was glad to have Deborah sit with me, actually. We had a console where she could monitor what I was doing, and that made me feel a lot better, but at the same time, the nervousness is just going to be there.
Oh,
it's going to be there.
I imagine. Yeah. And you had a first day as a telecommunicator.
Oh, yes.
What was your first day like?
You literally blank out.
Yeah. You don't
it's
remember.
like you take a break and you're like, okay, where did those 3 hours just go? I don't remember, what did I say, what did I do, how do I handle it? And then after about a year, it seems
About
like
a year.
about a year,
Yes.
it all of a sudden clicks, and
Yes.
you go, "Wow! I just did that on my own. I didn't ask for any help. I just flowed through that armed robbery, you know, a piece of cake." And it hits you, and then it's an excellent feeling.
Yes.
It's,
Oh, I
it's
imagine.
awesome.
A feeling of accomplishment.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
How long did it take you to feel comfortable?
It was right about a year because
was.
I actually, right about the 6-month mark, I considered leaving the job. It was that hard, but I mean, you really actually, when you stick in there and you have a lot of supportive people around you, and the training continues to be available to you, and then by about a year, it does click and it sinks in.
You anticipated my next question. I was going to say, have you ever second-guessed yourself about whether the job was right for you after a particularly stressful day? And I know
Absolutely.
You have a lot of them.
Absolutely. In fact, the reason I second-guessed it was because I realized we had not only the lives of the community that called in, but we're responsible for the law enforcement officers that we deal with, the paramedics, the firefighters. We're sending them places that not only put help for someone else, but their lives possibly in jeopardy. So there's a lot of responsibility, and that did make me second-guess.
And you're kind of doing it all at one time.
Yes.
Which
yes.
we're going to get into that, because multitasking is part of the job.
Absolutely.
Did you ever second-guess yourself?
Oh, yes, sir.
You did.
And then even years after being there were some times that I would leave. We had what was called a Sally Port, where we parked in the bottom of it. You'd come out at the end of the day and get in your car, and you try to leave your job there, but you really can't. A piece of it has to come with you, and you would be upset. Did I send enough? Did I do what I needed to do? And
you review.
You go back. You go back.
But I mean, was there ever a time you said, I don't know, I can't do this?
Not that I couldn't do it. Not that I couldn't
Or that
do it.
I don't want to do this. And
There was a couple of times where it was, you know, wonder if I need to second guess this just because I don't want to hurt anybody.
Right.
But you've got to have that fear because we don't want you too cocky.
too relaxed.
That's right, because then you're going to miss something.
Well, what is the stress level like on a daily basis? It's got to be a very high-stress job.
It's very high, but and actually I've heard a survey one time, and they said that a telecommunicator stress level is number 3 behind the President of the United States and the air traffic controller. And number 3 would be the telecommunicator. And so that's a high stress level. That's a very high. And I don't know how accurate it is now, but when I heard that, I believed it. I believed it.
And you mentioned sitting and second-guessing yourself after a shift. Is it hard to leave it behind at the end of a shift, the day?
It's the only part that's really hard to leave behind is what happened to the person that called for help.
Yes.
We don't have the closure that police officers and paramedics and firefighters have unless one of them call us and say, "You're patient, they made it." Or, you know, "You did good because we got there in a good amount of time."
Right.
That's the really hard part is you go home and wonder how they are.
Right.
Yeah,
And we would love to be able to call them all and follow up, but when you answer 500,000 calls a year, that's a lot of phone calls we'd be making after dark.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're going to talk more about exactly how many calls they deal with in a single day and some of the more memorable calls when we come back. We're talking with 2 telecommunicators from the New Hanover County 911 Center. Stay with us.